Welcome to What's Next in Emergency Management with Michael Prasad of the Center for Emergency Management Intelligence Research. This podcast highlights advocacy, research, academics, and more. I'm Christopher, an AI-generated voice used for interludes and breaks. Please note that Michael is an Amazon affiliate and may be compensated for referrals and content in this podcast. This episode's special guest is Dr. Daniel Aldrich.
Hi folks, it's Mike Prasad from the Emergency Management Network. And here's my November 2025 update for the emergency management-related advocacy, research, and writing work that I've done for the last couple of months and I'll be doing this month and in the near future. For advocacy work, I'm continuing to write about censorship by the U.S. federal government, including the removal of a detailed peer-reviewed emergency management article written by me. I wrote about the massive efforts that all organizations, both public and private, are going through now to scrub language on their websites and public outreach messages to avoid getting that laser-cutting death ray of the feds. Over at the Emergency Management Network Substack in a piece called How to Cut a Firebreak. I also write opinion editorials, which are politically charged for sure, over at Medium under my Barton Do Not consulting firm's name. Robert A. Heinlein, in his short story The Man Who Sold the Moon, said of censorship, "The principle is wrong. It's like demanding that grown men live on skim milk because the baby can't eat steak." And speaking of babies, I'm still advocating for increasing and standardizing the aspects of family choice for infant and toddler feeding support during disasters. The old model of providing only formula to babies who have challenges with feeding is unhealthy, and my team has been touring the country virtually presenting an alternative set of protocols and plans. We have applied for speaking events in 2026, and I'll let you know where and when we'll be advancing this effort. We're also working closely with that big non-governmental organization who focuses on sheltering during disasters to get them to change their plans, organizational staffing, equipment available, training, and exercising, just like any good emergency manager would. I'll put the link to our pro bono, we're doing this all for free, work in our show notes as well. For research, I'm continuing my anti-swatting research over at Barton Do Not, which gets published at the subscriber side of the Seamers Substack. I'm working on conversations with a vendor who supports the dispatching software at Public Safety Access Points, or PSAPs. You might know them as 911 call centers, but really they're so much more than that. And with the advances in getting text messages, emails, even live video feeds via cell phones, also comes more advanced threats from artificial intelligence-generated deepfakes and disinformation. I'm also in touch with a special agent from the FBI who focuses on advocacy for police departments to sort of slow their roll while responding to presumed swatting calls. He really wants to make sure that officers stay safe, as well as the public. This is the subject of a recent post at the Emergency Management Network, which I'll cover in a moment about polar bears and movie theaters. And by the way, there's a ton of research and subject matter expertise out there on anti-swatting efforts as they relate to kindergarten through 12th grade schools, a term you'll hear as K-12 schools, both public and in the private sector. I'm working on capturing, collecting, and curating the best of all of that over at the Seamers Substack site. Providing solutions for this threat is interwoven with the pathway to violence and other threats at K-12 schools. It also brings to the forefront the real need for coordination, collaboration, cooperation, and most importantly, communications between school districts and local emergency responders through their respective emergency management teams. It's a team effort on this. This problem is only growing and it's quite agile, but it is solvable. I did a bit of writing in September, with work published via third parties. In the Domestic Preparedness Journal, I had an article advocating for a split between emergency management and homeland security, period, but especially if national defense becomes an element of disaster readiness. I wrote another piece, this time in Homeland Security Today, on the same topic, but for a different audience. For this one, it was for the Homeland Security folks. And Dan Scott and I will be exploring this issue and concern about potentially having national defense be part of emergency management's responsibilities over at the Emergency Management Network Substack. And we're going to write it in a way that we're looking for feedback from our readers. We want to know what you folks think about this issue, this potential new mission involving national defense.
Dr. Daniel Aldrich is a distinguished professor at Northeastern University, recognized for his expertise in disaster recovery, emergency management, and social resilience. With an extensive background in academic research and public policy, Dr. Aldrich has contributed significantly to the understanding of how communities respond to and recover from crises. His work often bridges the gap between scholarly analysis and practical solutions, making him a respected voice in both academic circles and among practitioners in the field of emergency management. Dr. Aldrich has an extensive portfolio of peer-reviewed journal articles he has authored or co-authored, and he has published 3 books so far: Black Wave, Building Resilience and Site Fights. Those books are all available on Amazon, with the show notes having links available. Again, please note that Mike Prasad is an Amazon affiliate and may earn a commission for any book sales made through these links.
I've known Dr. Aldrich for nearly a decade now, and I follow his work on placemaking and hyperlocal community disaster readiness. He's someone who solves problems for emergency managers and should be on your list of required reading and research. I asked him in late October 2025 what he's been working on recently and what is next for him in terms of connections to emergency management.
I'm very excited to tell you about the work that I'm doing this last month that is emergency management related. A colleague, Renee Henvin, and I built a social capital and social infrastructure measurement framework for Australia that uses publicly available data to capture bonding, bridging, and linking ties, along with a new framework for capturing social infrastructure, the places and spaces where we connect. And these data that we're collecting will help us better understand which communities are prepared to work together and have those strong social ties during disasters, and the areas that are colder areas where there are fewer connections. That's been a very exciting process. You can find that online. Again, that's the Social Capital and Social Infrastructure Framework for Australia. Next month, I hope to finish a new book that's called Beyond Common Ground, focused on those kind of social infrastructure facilities, libraries, parks, and pubs. We build connections and to show how they can help us during extreme weather events and other disasters to increase our resilience.
Thank you, Dr. Aldrich. I'll add those 2 links about the information, at least the details of it, in the show notes as well, too. Finishing up this podcast with a little bit more of what I've done recently in terms of my own writing. And I hope to clean up this for the next podcast episode so it seems a little bit more organized. Todd DeVoe and I wrote a multi-part series at the EMN's Substack called Chronic or Systemic Disasters and the Nexus to Emergency Management. That series of posts should wrap up for paid subscribers in the middle of November 2025. It includes our take on immigration and border control from an emergency management perspective, ethical questions for emergency managers, the role of professional accreditation for both the individual and the organization, and the role of professional associations. Full transparency, both Todd and I are volunteer-elected board members of the International Association of Emergency Managers USA. In October of this year, I also wrote A Polar Bear is Attacking the Movie Theater, Swatting and Law Enforcement's Response, for the EMN Substack. And it was about the absurdity of some misinformation, disinformation, fictitious threats. The point of the article was to note that in many cases, a swatting call to a police department can be just as impossible a scenario as a polar bear attacking a movie theater. Over at the Center for Emergency Management Intelligence Research, the CEMERS Substack, we added the following posts, and some of these are for paid subscribers only, in September. We added a piece on deepfake media scams, the psychological science behind misinformation spread, enhancing K-12 behavioral threat assessment and management practices, and the social ecological model, or SEM, and violence protection. And we continue to send out alerts, training opportunities, emergency management intelligence systems that we find, and more and much more in our monthly blog. You can subscribe for free via a link in the show notes as well. And finally, in November of 2025, I'll be at the International Association of Emergency Managers USA National Conference in Louisville, Kentucky, between November 15th and the 20th. If you're there, feel free to say hi, and please stop by the Emergency Management Network's media booth while you're there as well, too. Have a great month, and we will talk to you again in December.
This has been What's Next in Emergency Management with Michael Prasad. Mike wrote for me to say to please subscribe, like, or whatever it is you do for this podcast. Thank you for listening.